Some time ago I made a couple of videos showing you how to create a mosaic necklace using deep bezels. Well, after I made those videos, I've had quite a few people ask me, how can you create a mosaic necklace using shallow bezels? Well, in this video I'm going to show you how to create a mixed media mosaic necklace using a shallow jewellery mount, and I'm going to show you that right now. This is a 40 by 30 pendant mount, and it's a silverware silver plate finish. I'm pretty sure, but not 100% sure, that it's 99% pure silver finish. Now, this came from a company called bezels Boutiques, and I'll put the website at the bottom of the screen here in case you want to go and have a look at them. It's a fairly large jewellery company, and they sell many different platings that are made in the US. They also sell many different beads and a whole host of different items, and it's well worth having a look. And they're based in the US in Ohio. So we'll go to their website just very quickly and I'll show you some of the things that they actually carry. Now, here I am at the bezels Boutiques website, and as you can see, Brenda carries a huge range of jewellery making supplies, from brass stampings to jewellery making tools, to lockets and charms, to rhinestone chain, pretty well anything that you need, and also many hard to get things, or maybe even pieces that are no longer made. She offers free shipping on all US orders over $50, so that's handy if you live in the US. And also, bezels has a creative group community page on Facebook, which is really good if you're making jewellery. It's a good group to be a member of. And also she offers beads and bead mixes as well. And you know, quite a number of these items can also be used in mosaics too, depending on what project you're going to be using. You just have to make sure, like anything, that it's going to be suitable for the project you're going to be making. Now, bezels recently wrote a book on 1928, the famous jewellery company, and I've bought a number of these brass stampings to be used in mosaics as well, and they work really well because they're made in the USA and very good quality. Now, beads, she carries quite a number of different beads, and like I said, bead mixes, chains, and also she has her own YouTube channel where Brenda gives free instructional videos. So anything to do with jewellery making you'll find here. Brenda also has an Etsy store where she actually sells more items in bulk, which is also well worth having a look at. So anyway, I just thought I'd point this out because, like I said, there's a number of items that bezels carries that you could use in your mosaics, just depending on the type of project you're creating. Anyway, let's get back into the video. Now, to go with this beautiful pendant mount, I'm going to be using some plate, and this came from the UK, and it's a beautiful plate and it has lovely designs on it. So I'm actually going to want to use this bit here, and I'm going to show you how I get that out of the plate. Now, I'm also going to be using some beads. I'll probably use these. I'm not 100% sure, but I'll probably use them. And like all my pieces, I wing it as I go. And it doesn't necessarily mean that this is the only way of doing something. This is just my way of doing it. I'm also going to be using some pearls, and these are a couple of different shades and also sizes. And I like to have different sizes whenever I'm doing something like this, because there's always those gaps where you might just fit a smaller pearl in there rather than leave it. So having different sizes works quite well. And I'm also probably going to be using some broken jewellery as well. Now, the adhesives that I'm going to be using are going to be Epoxy Clay and also E6000. Now, I know a lot of people don't like E6000, but it does come into its own on certain jobs, and I don't mind using it. I don't use it all the time, but like every product I buy, or before I buy it, I always read the manufacturer's safety data sheets so as I can take the necessary safety steps to protect my health. So using it correctly should be fine, but always read those safety data sheets before you begin using any product, and just don't take someone's word for it. You need to do your own due diligence. Now, just to show you how I cut the plate, this was how the plate looked, and all I did was I cut it up into sections. Now, you can use double-wheeled nippers, and these are quite handy to use. However, on some plates you can also use your glass scorer. Now, I use the glass scorer on plates that I feel are going to cut quite well. Now, because this particular plate had patterns on all sides of the plate, I didn't want to use the double-wheeled nippers and cut it here and it breaks across to here. So I actually used the glass scorer to force it to where, or to help force it, or to help guide it to where I wanted it to go. And this is what I did, was I just started at the edge there. Now clearly on this particular area here, there's quite a pattern here, and I didn't want to actually go through that either because I want to use that further down the track, not on this piece but on another mosaic. So all I did was I just put my glass scorer on the edge there. I don't know, I hope you can see this. Just put on the edge there and then maneuver it straight across in one motion. And you should hear that glass scoring sound, even though that's the glaze here. Now, I did then just put my nippers right on the score line, and normally I put it on the edge, but I actually went further in because I wanted to make sure that I had a better chance of it going where I wanted it to, and then I just pushed firmly. Just wait a minute. There it is there. And then it just broke where I wanted it to. Now I could have used my, without the glass scorer, I could have just used my glass nippers and that would have worked on this piece. But the problem is on a bigger plate, it may, the actual cut may actually, or the actual break may skew off in some other area. So I find using a glass scorer does work quite well. And then all I have to do now is just cut it where I want it to, or break it where I want it to, and shape it. And all I'm doing is when I'm shaping it, I just put it on the actual edge, get a texture, and you want to, this is kind of like a little bit of a hard bit to do, but you want to kind of like, if you're putting it down the bottom, which I'm going to be doing on this one, then you're kind of like guiding it the line where you think it's going to go. And then all I did then was just nip it with the double-wheeled nippers. Just around, just taking your time. Little nips, not big nips. And it needs a bit more off here. And then put it in there, and that's pretty good. That's not too bad, but it needs a bit more off that corner there, so you just take a bit more off. And then you can get in there and then just where there's a few points there, you can get in there and just fine nip those like that. And you just keep going around until you get a smoother edge on it. And you can also use a grinder. If you have a glass grinder, you can also use that. So that's all I did, was just go around the edge like that. And then once you've got that, all the edge how you want it, then you can adhere that down if you want to. Now, I find that the double-wheeled nippers works great. It doesn't work as easy as that for all plates, because some plates will, you know, like this one's a porcelain plate and it actually does break really quite well. But there's other plates that are quite friable and they will more shatter, so they don't go exactly where you want them to. But when you're doing something like this and you're going to be doing mixed media, you can of course cut this into a round, so you can use just the center flower and put it in the center of the piece. It really does depend on the look you're actually after and the design you're after as to how you want to place the piece. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the E6000 to adhere this. So I'm just going to now open this up, and you don't need too much E6000. And we're not putting it around the outside, because when you push this down, you want it to, you certainly want it to adhere to the inside rather than the outside of the edge. So we're just going to, and you can use You can use a, there we go. You can use a toothpick as well to maneuver that. That's not an issue. But because this is quite a large piece, I don't think I need that. And all we do is put it on there, swiggle it around. If that's such a word, swiggle. And then we let that set. Anyway, I'll clear this and we'll come back with the epoxy clay. Now, one of the things I meant to mention before I went off camera is when you are adhering a piece of tessera down or whatever you're going to be using, in this case, it would be crockery, before you leave, just double check it, because I want to make sure that it's center and I want to make sure that it's also straight across here. I don't want to come back and find I was quick to adhere it, I didn't double check it, I come back and this is slightly off center or slightly crooked, and that's just going to make your piece look really, really average. So just spend a bit of time. Don't rush off once you've stuck it down. Double check it. You know, look at it from different angles just to make sure it's right. Now, the other thing I like to also do is when I'm using epoxy clays, I like to turn it over and put a piece of contact on the back here, because that's going to save me a little bit of cleaning up if I happen to get residue on the back from the epoxy clay from my gloves. And I also like to have a wet rag here and actually wipe things over when using epoxy clay so as I don't get the residue on anything there, because if it cures and you've got epoxy clay on there, that residue is just going to make your pieces look a little bit, well, they're certainly not going to look clear, they're going to look probably a little bit foggy. So I find that wiping everything over with water will stop that from happening. Okay, I've got my epoxy clay here. And all I'm going to do now is just use a piece of it. I've mixed up far too much, and I tend to do that. And I'm just going to stick it down. And I don't want to have too much in it at the moment, because when I start adhering things into it, it is going to squish it out. And the last thing I want to do is actually have the epoxy clay sticking out over the edge here. Yes, I can cover that up. I can spend some time to clean it up, and I can put an edge around here. But if it can avoid doing that, it's just going to make your job a lot easier. Now, the other thing I really like to do as I'm going, and even when I'm finishing, I like to take a photo. Now, I'm not taking a photo to keep as a record, although that's also a good idea. I do that as well. But the reason why I take a photo is because the camera sees things that you may not. So I find by taking a photo and looking at it, you can pick up on things that you may like or may not like. And any mistakes that you see, you can fix up before the epoxy clay or the E6000 cures, depending on what you're using. Now, I'm thinking about putting these beads in, so I'm going to grab a strand of these beads and I'm going to put it around the edge here. Making sure that it's all within the line, the inner line of the actual bezel. So what we're looking at, or the actual mount. So what we're looking at is having it inside this line, this edge. And also I want to make sure that the beads are very close together. I don't want my beads to be, have gaps in between. So now all I'm going to do now, that's good language, is, and my fingers are probably going to be in the way here, but that's okay. I've cut the end off. At least I think I've cut that end off. And we're going to now get that and pull the cord out of it. And that will allow us to have a nice line there. That looks good. Now there's a little bit of epoxy clay that's squished out here, so I'm just going to grab that and take that off. Because you're cleaning up, it's attention to detail. Especially if you're going to take a photo. If you take a photo and you're planning on selling your piece, the photo will show every fault in your piece. So it's important to clean up as you go. Okay, now I think what I'll also do is attach this piece, but not right now, into here. Now I can attach it that way, or I can attach it that way, which I quite like. Actually, I might do it that way. Let me have a look here. And like I say, I always wing everything I do. I kind of have a basic plan, but I wing it. Yeah, I quite like that. So what I'm going to do now is just put some of these very small pearls into the edge, like this. Actually, I might even have smaller than that. Yeah, these will be better. And the beauty about this is that you may have an idea, but you can just change it as you go. And if you've completed a piece or close to completing a piece and you're not really happy with it, don't be afraid to just rip it up and start again. Get rid of that hole. I don't want to see that hole. Put another few pieces in. And you can colour your epoxy clay if you wish to. Just double check that to make sure that's going to be okay. Yep. All that way. Still haven't decided on which way I want to do it. I think that way is going to work quite well, to be honest. And it's always good to keep looking at what you're doing to make sure it's looking at it from all angles to make sure that it's all working to how you want it to. Because once the epoxy clay sets up, you aren't going to get it off. And there's lots of things that you can put in these bezels and mounts. It really does come down to what you've got. I don't have a lot of small things, and if I was doing a number of these, I would be buying some more small things to put into them, because you need things at different sizes. It's about layering and creating that depth. So having a range of different size items like beads and flowers and things like that really works quite well. Oops. And this particular one I've pushed in too far. So we'll reset him with a new bead. Epoxy clay in the center. And this is really great for things that are uneven, like something like this where the backs are not quite right. Well, it's not that they're not quite right, it's just that it's uneven. Right, we'll put a bit more epoxy sculpt on here. That's better. Can't see any epoxy sculpt anywhere. Let me just check. Oh yeah, that's good. Just keep double checking things, because when you push things into the epoxy clay, you squeeze other things out or move them. So it's imperative that once you do it, you keep looking for where they could come out of. And also try and not get, try not touch the epoxy clay too much, because what you'll end up with is residue everywhere, which is not really what you're after. So they're in pretty good. I want to wipe it all over now. because this will make sure that your piece stays nice and shiny. Do the back. There you go. I think that doesn't look too bad. You can add anything you want to it, any type of, pretty well any type of beads. There's no grouting in this. The only thing is that obviously if you have a lot of smaller items, then you can certainly do a lot more. But I haven't got a lot of smaller items here, so I'm a bit limited with beads and things like that. But if you've got a lot of small items and flowers and all sorts of things, then you can add that into it. The other thing you can do is build this right up if you want and dome it. So as you create this really nice domed effect, and you can really make a nice, say if you wanted to have a whole bouquet of flowers and stuff and it domed up, that would look very, very effective. But at the end of the day, it depends what you want to do and what you want to put into it and how you want it to look. Well, there you go. I think it's turned out really good and it's quite blingy. All it needs now is a chain. Now, I didn't use half the materials I thought I would have, but it's always good to have them there in case you do need them. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you've taken something away from it. And if you have any comments, put them down in the bottom of the comment section and I'll see you in the next one. Enjoy.